Star Wars is in pretty bad shape at the moment. It's no secret that Solo, a Star Wars story, underperformed at the box office, with a paltry domestic opening of just over 100 million. On Memorial Day weekend no less, it's the first Disney Star Wars movie to not even come close to making $1 billion. These numbers for a Star Wars movie are pretty bad, which is a shame because I quite enjoyed Solo even though I was never desperate for the concept to come to fruition. It was fun, Alden Ehrenreich was a good Han Solo, and it felt like the movie that really played up the western angle of Star Wars in a way we hadn't quite seen before on screen. Cut to last Christmas and Rian Johnson gave us his heart, but the very next day, half the fans gave it away. To say the second instalment in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, Star Wars The Last Jedi, was divisive would be an understatement. You'll find comment sections aflame to this day, and there will be no signs of that letting up for a very long time. Absolutely everything about this movie has been pulled apart and scrutinised to the nth degree. Countless fan theories have emerged, and you can find a positive comment for every negative one on just about anything to do with the movie. From any single character, scene, moment, setting, the list is exhausting. Unpacking the hate and the debates surrounding the Disney series of Star Wars movies isn't easy to do. There most definitely is an area of the fan base that is toxic. There's people that have said some absolutely deplorable things, and there's people that have reached new heights in how to be as pedantic as all hell and pick apart the most minute, inconsequential details. Nobody cares why bombs work in space. But it would also be an oversimplification to think everyone who doesn't enjoy them is a bigot or a harasser. Just as it would be ignorant for me, someone who enjoyed the hell out of the last two movies, to say that Disney doesn't have a problem with its Star Warsing. I loved The Last Jedi, it's the third best Star Wars movie for me. It's fresh, it's exciting, it answered all the questions I wanted to know, and it gave me things I didn't even know I wanted. But I think it would be unfair of me to sit here and say that Disney doesn't have a Star Wars problem just because I'm part of the fan base that is enjoying their output. The fact that they just had their first true failure with Solo, a movie that, given its production costs, might not even break even, and The Last Jedi, the movie that caused many fans to say enough is enough. Now groups such as the True Fans Strike Back have made it their personal vendetta to defame the movie, and there's currently an effort to crowdfund a remake of Episode 8. They have producers involved, apparently. Disney's future for the property isn't looking exactly disastrous, but it isn't looking as good as it could be. Make no mistake, Disney needs to rethink their strategy if they want to galvanise the fan base and make everyone happy, and more importantly, for them to make more of that dollar! So what might some of the problems be with Disney's approach to Star Wars, and how could this be fixed? It's interesting to me that as I began writing this particular video, the news came out that Disney were putting their Star Wars story spin-offs on hold. And then it came out that they might not be going ahead with them, or not. Whatever does end up happening, I think in a lot of ways, this could be the right decision, and a step in the right direction. Why? Whilst everyone and their mums is jonesing for an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie...
Like who? Farmers? Who else?
Farmers' mums.
Maybe no one more so than myself, because God knows I must be wanting that stuff shot right into my veins if I'm willing to plot out an entire treatment and retell it in an hour-long video for the internet. What I'm trying to say is that it's clear the fans are telling Disney what they want, and in part, Disney are responsive to that. No matter what anybody says, if they're willing to make an entire movie about a character that barely had 10 lines in the original trilogy, and hire the guy responsible for creating one of the best superhero movies of all time, then they must be serious. But making an entire movie about a character that barely had 10 lines in the original trilogy, and hiring the guy responsible for creating one of the best superhero movies of all time, is exactly the problem. Do we really need a Boba Fett movie? A character less interesting and competent than Jango Fett? Don't at me, okay? One of them gets killed by Mace Windu, the other by blind Han Solo. It's no contest. It's frankly no contest. Disney are obsessed with going back to the original era of Star Wars. They tried to make The Force Awakens as evocative of A New Hope as they could. They devoted an entire spin-off movie into adapting the fucking title crawl. They were willing and waiting to drop an entire trilogy on us surrounding A New Hope's breakout character before those plans crumbled. And this obsession is part of Disney's way of getting everyone on side, including the mums and dads that grew up on Star Wars. But here's the key problem. Fans will say they want things that they don't really want, or even what they don't really need. Sure, a Boba Fett movie sounds good on paper, but is going back to that era for the third time in movie form such a good idea for Disney? There's literally an infinite amount of storytelling possibilities with Star Wars. Disney could go to any time period and tell a story with absolutely anybody. So why do they keep transporting us to the same period in that universe, give or take, 10 years? If Disney are going to pick any time period to zero in on and pump out movie after movie, then why not shift the spin-off focus onto the same time period that the sequel trilogy is currently dealing with? I think there's a lot of reasons why the sequel trilogy hasn't been embraced. But I think a key reason that I don't see coming up in discussion often is that the era these movies are set within the fictional universe of Star Wars just isn't that interesting. Or at least it's not at the moment, because there just isn't as much material on it. Let's wind back to the prequel trilogy and the time those films were being made. For all George Lucas's faults, at least he was committed to developing a trilogy of films with enough lore and supporting stories to make them feel like a world just as fully realised as the original trilogies. We had games telling, at the time, canonical stories. We had not one but two animated series dedicated to fleshing out the Clone Wars. We had plenty of stories to choose from and dive into to get a more rounded view of that world beyond the movies. Yes, I know Disney has created novels expanding the time periods, and there have been comics for characters such as Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma, but to be frank, this simply isn't enough. It's clear what period from Star Wars Disney are more invested in when two of their 4 tentpole blockbusters are set just before A New Hope. If Disney really means business with this whole putting the spin-offs on ice thing, which to be clear, I don't think they are, then why not make a more concerted effort to tell stories 30 ABY or further? And not just the films too. Do a Clone Wars style show that can get the hardcore crowd back on side, with all the fan pleasing moments that show had in droves. Make a kick-ass video game in this time period that makes you feel like the world you see in the movies is one you yourself can visit and explore. I was pretty disappointed when Jedi Fallen Order was announced at E3 earlier this year for this very reason. Why are we getting more media on the Jedi being hunted down after Order 66? It's one of the most covered subject matters in all of Star Wars, including across fanfiction, and we already had a game covering this in Star Wars The Force Unleashed, albeit from the perspective of the player hunting Jedi rather than being on the run. But will this new game really carve out something for itself that's wholly unlike that 2008 video game? I don't care that it's now non-canon, the experience of playing it still happened for me and many others. You can go out and buy it right now. Why do we need the same thing again? Why not take that core concept, Jedi on the Run, and set it in a post-Return of the Jedi setting? Why not make the player the last Jedi Padawan left alive after Ben Solo and the Knights of Ren have destroyed Luke's temple? With Luke missing, thought dead, you're now forced to go on the run as the newly christened Kylo Ren hunts you down to finish what he started. That right there gives you the same elevator pitch as Jedi Fallen Order, but it gives you a completely fresh time period to play in. It could flesh out Luke, Kylo Ren's rise to evil, and even Snoke. Something which might satisfy a lot of people who were upset about his lack of backstory in The Last Jedi. A video game can work wonders for this. I love Star Wars Bounty Hunter from the days of the PS2. So much so that I bought it again on my PS4. It's a clunky game and some of the design choices are really flawed, but it never fails to charm me with its effort to put me into the world of the prequels. And Jango is awesome in the game. You feel like you really get to know him in a way that expands upon the movie and adds emotional weight to his decision to raise his son Boba. Now imagine if Disney made this happen but for Snoke, or did this to expand upon what we've already had with Kylo Ren and even Luke. Would it still matter that all we got out of Snoke in The Last Jedi wasn't what people expected, if there was enough standout material that did answer all those questions? Rather than fans feeling that the questions that they had been asking since The Force Awakens don't matter, instead tell them, those questions do matter. They just didn't get answered when or where you thought that they would. But right over here are all the answers you wanted, in a story that's interesting in its own right. Disney shouldn't be afraid to do this, they shouldn't be afraid to expand the lore. But anyway, Snoke is just one example. As I said, give us another great animated series, show us what's been going on in all corners of the galaxy we recognise but haven't seen yet. I desperately want to see Coruscant on screen again, it's my favourite planet in the series, and I would love to see the New Era characters have adventures there. We still don't really know what Jon Favreau's live-action series is going to turn out to be, but I'm really hoping it's something as far removed as possible from the original and prequel trilogies. It's a real chance for Disney to help rectify some of the problems they've been having, and could bring some goodwill their way depending on how they go about it. It's not too late to make the sequel trilogy era something distinct and above all else, special. Remember when people hated the prequels, hated the portrayal of Anakin Skywalker, and hated pretty much anything to do with that era aside from, the McGregor. Well, now there's loads of content to accompany those movies that have made that version of Star Wars every bit as detailed as the original trilogy. Oh, and if you saw the Kenobi movie isn't happening, then why don't you check out my pitch for the movie? The comments so far have been super positive, which I'm really appreciative about, and you might enjoy it too, or you might not, and that's okay. Just leave me some feedback, I'd really appreciate it. And to those people on RemakeTheLastJedi.com, I applaud you, I really do. I applaud that anyone could be passionate enough to want to fund a remake of a movie just to make sure that a fictional universe can give them the feeling they remember all over again. I don't think these groups set out to cause hurt or harm, they just really love Star Wars. But shitting on Rian Johnson is misguided, and going about it this way probably isn't the right thing to do. After all, this guy tried to create something within that world, something that would be exciting and make us all happy, and that's ultimately no different than what these fans want to do. Let's say they make their movie, they remake The Last Jedi, and a lot of people think it's pretty bad when they see it. At what point are those fans as bad as Rian Johnson in their own eyes? It's not that these fans don't have a right to be upset or disagree with the movie or movies they end up getting. That should come part and parcel with Star Wars, and to be honest, any movie. I think what people seem to miss is that it is one thing to call out someone's work, and another to have the audacity to think that what you could do is going to be infinitely better from the get-go. I don't like Zack Snyder's DC movies. I hate them. And yeah, if someone gave me the chance, I would love to tell a Batman vs Superman story my own way, but to sit there and assume that whatever I can come up with, not to mention the logistics of making the thing work practically, working with talent, keeping the people funding it happy, blah 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 blah, to assume that I'd just nail all that and turn out something better than Zack Snyder is a hell of an inflated thing to think. So don't think that I do think that when my pitch for Man of Steel 2 comes out on the channel. It's a nobody tossing around some ideas and having fun with it. It's not a statement of flagrant superiority. And that's what these fans are doing ultimately. They're sitting there every day thinking, I can make a better Last Jedi if only someone would give me the chance. The problem isn't how do I make The Last Jedi better, it's how do I convince enough people to fund my vision to make The Last Jedi better, which are two very different things. The democratization of information that has occurred from things like the internet has made it easier for people to pick up a camera or type away at a script and learn how to make movies, and that's awesome. But I think it's also helped lead us to this forced sense of entitlement. Just because anyone can make a movie doesn't mean that they should. Or at least it doesn't mean that they should assume that they can and it will inherently be awesome. There's no guarantee. And that's not me saying that no one can be a filmmaker or that you need this fancy qualification, this type of camera training, and so forth. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that someone like Rian Johnson bled to get to the place he is now, making Star Wars movies for you. And whether or not they hit the mark, you can't say the guy didn't give it his best shot. It's probably a good thing to remember that whether you like or hate any Star Wars movie, these people making them are fans just like you and me. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you'd like to see more from Full Fat videos, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can see our social media links down below if you want to follow us on things like Twitter. And thank you very much to all our patrons. If you would like to join our Patreon, the link is in the description. We will see you next week.